All right, for my model of the locavores prompt, I'm going to start with my prompt analysis. Remember, the pieces of the prompt are, this is usually just a little context. This is giving me my task, and this is more the expectations or requirements. I'm going to turn my draw thing on here so we can see when I write. Locavores are people who have decided to eat locally or produce products as much as possible, with an eye to nutrition as well as sustainability, resource use that preserves the environment. The locavore movement has become widespread over the past decade. All right, so I circled locavore because that's just kind of defining what my topic is about. Imagine that a community is considered organizing a locavore movement. I'm going to underline that because that's kind of a good insight to the perspective I should have. Carefully read the following 7 sources, including the introductory information for each source, then synthesize information from at least 3 of the sources and incorporate it into a coherent, well-developed essay that identifies the key issues. So that's part of it. Ooh, that's a really weird circle. Key issues associated with the locavore movement and the implications for the community. So I circled those things because obviously those are the 2 main tasks I got to get because of, sorry, I can't find my cursor, this and right here. Make sure that your argument is central. Use the sources to illustrate and support your reasoning. Avoid merely summarizing the sources. Indicate clearly which sources you are drawing from, whether through direct quotations, paraphrase, summary. You may cite as usual, and then it gives me my source information. So based on the prompt alone, really your analysis is going to come in this part right here, and that's going to be universal for all the prompts, and kind of zeroing in on that task statement. And what this task is pointing out is that I need to think about the key issues associated with the locavore movement and their implications for the community. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to pull up my little pre-write page over here, and I'm going to type back to my claim, but I have to think about the key issues and the implications for a community. I'm going to use that pre-outlining strategy we talked about in class to kind of walk through the ideas I can come up with on my own. But the key issues with locavore or eating local, the first thing that kind of comes to my mind is the availability of food because of different climates. The cost, possibly. I guess it could be more expensive. I'm not sure, but I'm going to write that down as a possible angle. What else? What other key issues? I suppose the benefits of it or the why people do it. I don't really know what those things are, so that might become some key issues. That's kind of like my pre-thought, what I have. I'm going to go and think about the implications for community. One thing is that it's going to help local farmers, I think, because they're being supported by their communities. I think buy-in from the community might be challenging to kind of go along with it. And then limited options, how does that affect health and nutrition? And then maybe supporting small business, which is kind of the same as supporting local farmers. Based on these, I kind of know what I'm going to go into my paper looking for already, even just doing this little pre-think outline or the pre-outline that we've practiced in class. I think that overall, in theory, locavorism is beneficial, but in practice, it is infeasible. So in other words, based on these examples that I come from, like I'm sure there's lots of benefits and the availability, but sorry, I'm sure there's a lot of benefits to it and it's helping local farmers, but the feasibility, especially in a place like North Dakota, seems less likely. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to, based on this, I'm going to go into my paper and look for these key issues as well as the implications for the community, but really in the gist of what I'm looking for is how is it beneficial or why do people do it? but why is it infeasible? So this infeasible word is kind of my angle for this whole thing. Okay, so source A. I'm going to turn my drawing tool back on, make it a little thicker so I don't lose it. This source is by Jennifer Mazer, 10 Reasons to Eat Local. Okay, so this is obviously about the benefits. I should have just typed that instead of trying to write it, but definitely about the benefits. Ooh, and it's a list. Whenever you have a list, it's good just to kind of scan the bold part so that you can pick out what you need, because beyond that, you might save yourself time not having to read the whole thing. But I'm going to read this information is always helpful right here. The following is an article from a group web blog written by individuals who are interested in the benefits of eating food grown and produced locally. One question I ask myself when I read that stuff is if it's biased, and since this is just kind of a group that's interested in it, they're not going to like make any profits off it. I definitely think that this source doesn't have any bias, so I don't have to address that in my paper. But the first thing, eating locally means more for the local economy. That is something I talked about in my implications for sure. It won't let me type. I'll type over here. Oh, there. Implications. Farmers. And then they have the support locally grown produce is fresher. Get my pencil back out here, talking about the freshness of it. Tastes better, that's kind of the same thing as this one, so I'm going to draw a little line between those two. Locally grown fruits have longer to ripen. That's kind of still making this one argument. Better for air quality and pollution, so I'm going to write that another benefit is that it helps, it's good for the environment. I'm going to put implications, so I keep going back. The reason I keep writing implications is because I want to make sure that as I come back to this, I have a quick reference for evidence, because that's my second point in my pre-outline. Alrighty. Eating local is better for air quality pollution. That's what I just read, so I put that in the wrong spot. Let's fix that first. There we go. Buying local food helps us keep in touch with the seasons. I don't know what that means, so I'm going to read the rest. By eating with the seasons, we are eating food when they are at their peak taste. So essentially, it's the same thing as all those other ones. Buying local grown food is fodder for a wonderful story. Definitely need to read the rest of that one. Whether it's the farmer who brings the local apples to the market or the baker who makes the local bread, knowing parts of the story about your food is such a powerful part of enjoying a meal. Okay, so there, where's my little cursor? There it is. I'm going to circle the farmer thing again because that's connected to one of my main ideas. Eating locally protects us from bioterrorism. I'm going to circle that word because I'm not really sure what they mean by that. Food with less distance to travel from farm to plate has less susceptibility to harmful contamination, so it's safer. I guess I can write that over here. Sorry for my bad typing. Local food translates to more variety. When a farmer is producing food that will not travel a long distance, will have shorter shelf life, and does not have a high yield demand, the farmer is free to try small crops of various fruits and vegetables that would probably not make it to this large supermarket. Before I get too far into this one, I'm going to point this out could be a good counter argument. The reason being that one of my issues that I saw with locavorism is the availability of food, and this might not be practical in a lot of places. So I'm just putting this little note for myself over to the side. Supporting local providers helps support responsible land development. There again, that connects back to the farmers. Okay, let's go on to source B. Source B is by Alyssa Smith and J.B. McKinnon, and it says plenty, one man, one woman, and a raucous year of eating locally. Definitely need to read the information for that one. The following passage is an excerpt from a book written by the creator of the 100-Mile Diet, an experiment in eating only foods grown and produced within a 100-mile radius. Okay, so obviously, since this person has an entire book on the diet, they might be biased, but it's definitely going to talk in terms of the pros or the benefits again. So if I'm using that source talk strategy we talked about in class, this one's probably going to align some things with what source A says. Foods begin to lose nutrition as soon as it is harvested. Fruits and vegetables that travel shorter distance are therefore likely to be closer in maximum nutrition. This I can definitely link back to source A, which said that they were fresher. Nowadays, we know a lot more about naturally occurring substances in produce, said Cynthia Sass. It's not just vitamins and minerals, but all these phytochemicals and really powerful disease-fighting substances, and we know that when a food never really reaches its peak ripeness, the levels of these substances never get as high. Yet, when I called to confirm these facts with Marion Nessel, a professor and former chair nutrition, food studies, and public health at New York University, she waved away the nutrition issue as a red herring. She said, yes, our 100-mile diet, even in winter, was almost certainly more nutritious than what the average American was eating. That doesn't mean it is necessary to eat local. Okay, so I'm going to add just a note for myself here that it is nutritious, but but not the only option. Just giving myself a little summary of what Marion Nessel said. There were marginal differences, but there will be nutritional differences, but they'll be marginal, said Nessel. I mean, that's not really the issue. I feel like it's the issue. Obviously, fresher foods that are grown here on better soil are going to have more nutrients, but people are not nutrient deprived, we're just nutrient deprived. So would Nessel, a dietitian, as one of America's most important critics of dietary policy, advocate for local eating? She says yes, so she is in favor. Why? Because she loves the taste of fresh fruit, she said. She loves the mystery of the years when the late corn is just utterly incredibly good, and no one can say why, it just is. She likes having farmers around and farms and farmland. Okay, I'm going to circle that piece because that is one of the implications I mentioned was the farmers. All right, source C. Source C is On My Mind, the Locomore Myth from Forbes magazine. Since it says myth, I'm guessing it's going to be against it. But let's read the first paragraph to get a better idea. Buy local, shrink the distance food travel, save the planet. The locavore movement has captured a lot of fans. To their credit, they are highlighting the problems with industrialized food, but a lot of them are making a big mistake. By focusing on transportation, they overlook other energy hogging factors of food production. Okay, so this I think is very relevant where it talked about the environment in source A. This is a good way to kind of counter that. That source A said it was good for the environment. Take lamb. 2006 academic study funded by the New Zealand government discovered that it made more environmental sense for a Londoner to buy lamb shipped from New Zealand than to buy. Okay, already with this one, I'm probably going to cross this piece of evidence out because there's a lot of bias there. If we're talking about the New Zealand government and they're promoting buying lamb from New Zealand, obviously they're kind of self-serving there. So I'm not going to use that particular example. So New Zealand lamb is not exceptional. Take a close look at water usage, fertilizer types, processing methods, and packaging techniques, and you discover the factors other than shipping outweigh the energy it takes to transport. One analysis by Rich Pirog of the Leopold Center for Sustainable Ed shows that the transportation accounts for only 11% of food's carbon footprint. A fourth of the energy required to produce food is extended in the kitchen. Still more energy is consumed per meal in a restaurant since restaurants throw away most of their leftovers. Okay, this again is just talking about a good refutation of the environment argument. Locavores argue that buying local food supports the area farmers and in turn strengthens the community. Fair enough. Left unacknowledged, however, is the fact that it also hurts farmers in other parts of the world.